There are so many challenges Android engineers face while designing a layout, which could be either designing a responsive layout, or design won't be hampered when changing the device orientation, or designing a complex layout in an easy way, or managing the layout performance. So all these kind of things is a very biggest problem for Android engineers. But now we have got a very powerful view group, that is your constraint layout. So hi everyone, this is Puneet. Today I will talk about what is constraint layout, terminologies used in the constraint layout, what is anchor point, what is constraint, what is barrier, what is guideline. So all these concepts we will discuss in today's video. After that we will discuss about most widely asked interview questions in the constraint layout. So let's get started. Okay, then our first question is, what is constraint layout? Constraint layout is also a view group like some other view groups, for example linear layout, relative layout, frame layout, etc. Now, name of the constraint layout itself defines it. That means a layout which is based on the constraints. Now what is constraint? Constraint means a connection or a relationship. That means design your layout on based on the constraints, based on the relationship. You can also call it as a relative layout, but very powerful relative layout. Now our second question is, why constraint layout? Why constraint layout came into the picture? Constraint layout make it easier to create responsive user interface. That means we can create that kind of a user interface who can adopt automatically to different screen sizes and different device orientations. Could be landscape or portrait. I'll show you that practically as well. Now let's discuss about the second main benefit of constraint layout. That is, we can design our layout with a single layout instance, or we can call it as a flat hierarchy. That means there is no need of a nested layouts. It provides a flat hierarchy. Now what's the benefit of a flat hierarchy? It avoids many problems came with the nested layouts. For example, less complex layouts, improved user interface rendering performance, because nesting of layouts hampers the performance of the app. That is why constraint layout is more powerful and recommended to use. Now here in this video we will talk about the terminologies. Terminologies could be constraints, which I just told, connections or relationships, anchor points, chains, barriers, guidelines, and many more. Let's go to the Android Studio and implement it practically. Here I have created one sample project. There is one dependency comes by default. If you can go to build.gradle, you can see this one, constraint layout. So this is the dependency by default came for constraint layout. Now let's go to our main activity layout and let's design something. Okay, so by default we have constraint layout in place. Now let's firstly discuss about first terminology, that is constraints. What is constraint? Constraint is a connection or a relationship. Now you can see how we can easily create the views. For example, let's take one button, simply drag and drop. Now if these four things you can see, these are your anchor points, or you can say constraint handles, who handles the constraint. Now what is constraint? Let's click on this one and drag it with this one. Perfect. Let's click on this one and then let's click on this one. So now what all these things, these are your constraints and these are your constraint handle. That means your left constraint, your top constraint, your right constraint, or your bottom constraint. Now let's go to our code window and see what code is there. Now if you can see here, this is constraint bottom to bottom of and to end of start to start of top to top of. That means your top constraint is at top of parent, your right constraint or end constraint is at end of parent, your bottom constraint is at end of bottom, your left or start constraint is at left or start of parent. That means our layout constraint bottom to bottom of parent, end to end of parent, start to start of parent, top to top of parent. That's it. So this is the syntax of applying the constraints. Syntax is app layout constraint source side to target side of then value. That means our source side is bottom, target side is this bottom, source side is end, target side is this end, and this is the value, or you can say the target ID. Now there are two values can be there. One is this is constraint or connected or related to parent or some other widget. I'll tell you how. Let's drag one more button and I want to place it here. Now let's say its start is at start of parent, end is at end of parent, and top is at bottom of this button. This is why we call it as a constraint That means value here is not the parent but this button ID, and the value of our bottom constraint would be parent. Minimum two constraints are compulsory, either left or right, one from that, either top or bottom, one from that. If you can see here of button 2, it's bottom to bottom of parent, end to end of parent, start to start of parent, but top to bottom of this button. Okay, so here we have given the value of one widget. We can give any value. So this is how we use constraints here. Now let's drag and drop one more button. Let's say this one. This button's end should be before this button, but this button start should be at parent. This button top should be parent and bottom should be parent. That means this button will always remain towards the left of this first button. Now we can use layout validation to see how it will look in other device sizes. For example, this is how it looks in the phone size, this is how it looks in the foldable, this is how it looks in the tablet, and this is how it looks in the desktop. Perfect. Layout won't be affected, doesn't matter in which screen size you are seeing this. So this is the beauty of the constraint layout. Now let's design one more layout. This is what we want to design. Now let's see how can we do that. Okay, let's create one new layout to design this screen. For example 1. Perfect, we have this one. There is one important saying I want to share about constraint layout. I'll discuss that after this layout, so keep watching. Okay, so firstly we need one image view. Let's quickly add one image view here. Let's say I want to give it as a 50 dp, and then let's create height as a wrap content. Let's give the id as iv logo. So here we have to add the constraints. Let's say our start off, it should be at parent. Now we want top of this image view to be at top of parent. So we have our image view. Let's give the source of this image view. I have already added one image here. Again, I would like to say, if you want to download the sample of this project, you can go to my GitHub and can download the sample repo. I will give the link of that sample repo in the description section of this video. Okay, so now we have our image view. Okay, now we need two text views. Let's quickly create that. Now here, if you can see, it is overlapping the image view. That means we have to give the constraints. Let's give constraint top to top of, that means top of this view should be at top of the parent. Now second thing is we have to give the start constraint. So start of this should be at end of image view. That means start constraint of this text view should be after the end of this image view. Now let's quickly create another text view which will be towards the bottom of our first text view. This is what we want as per the design. Let's quickly do that. Let's add the constraints here. Now very important thing here, we want our start constraint be the start of this text view so that it will always be aligned to this text view. So start to start of our text, so it will always be there, and top to bottom of our first text view. Let's give the text here, for example expired on 22. Perfect, this is what we wanted. Let's give the background of this complete view. For example, let's give this color. Our height should be wrap content. This is how we can use our constraint layout. Let's go to the layout validation to see how beautiful it looks in multiple screens. Perfect. Now one important thing which I wanted to discuss with you about constraint layout is about match parent. In constraint layouts, use of match parent is discouraged. Why? Because match parent doesn't take constraints applied on the widget into consideration. So that is why we should use 0dp instead of the match parent to behave like a match parent. Let's say I want to give it a remaining complete width. I will use as a 0dp, and for this all of our constraints should be applied and to end of parent. Now if you can see, our 0dp width will take all of the remaining size, or it will behave like a match parent. Now you can give it as a match parent, that will also take. But now if you have noticed, this is overlapping this one, but if you will give 0dp, it won't overlap. That means it will take the constraints applied. This is what I just told. Match parent doesn't take the constraints applied on the widget, but if we use 0dp instead of match parent, then it will take the constraints applied on it into consideration. That is why match parent constraint is discouraged in constraint layout. One more example layout I have already created in my GitHub repo. You can easily navigate to that. Please clone that repo and practice it by yourself. Okay, so let's discuss about widely asked interview questions related to constraint layout. So our first question is, why constraint layout? This is what we have discussed in the beginning, that it is used to create a responsive user interface which can be adapted automatically to different screen sizes. With that, it also provides a flat layout hierarchy. This should be pretty clear to you now. Now our second important question is, what is bias? Bias is basically positioning of the widgets. That means we have to give a value where we want our view to be positioned. That means it favors one side over the other. Here we have to give value as a float value that will range from 0 to 1. Here two kind of bias are there. One is horizontal and one is vertical. So this question is also normally asked during the interview at beginner level. Now let's discuss about our third question. What is the significance of match parent in constraint layout? This I have already told in the video that using of match parent is discouraged in constraint layout. Instead, we should use 0dp because match parent won't take the constraints into consideration. So I hope that you have got good idea on interview questions. So thank you so much guys. I hope that you have got good insight on constraint layouts. That's it for this video. I have created one more video of the constraint layouts where I have mainly focused on barriers, guidelines, and groups. And so I would say please watch that video where you will get good insight on the constraint layouts and you will be able to design the complex layouts in a very nicely way. With that, please share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can also get good insight on constraint layouts. So keep watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.